We are not here on this planet to close our eyes to the world.
We are here to go out and experience its many wonders.
Because through our experiences,
We become bigger than ourselves.
travel has the power to shape our world.
And make us whole again.
With 30 hotel brands and endless experiences, where can we take you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Rick Parkhill. I'm the director of brand storytelling, and I'm so pleased to be joined today by Annie Granatstein. Annie is currently the VP of Content Marketing for Marriott International, a fairly new role for her. She started in January 2021, but she's got quite an interesting background that prepared her for this role today. And I'd just like to welcome Annie. And we'll talk a little bit about your trajectory of your career path to become a brand storyteller and what's going on at Marriott. So welcome, Annie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. It's my pleasure. So listen, I was doing a little research for this, and I'm so intrigued to talk to you today because I don't know anybody else in the business that's kind of gone through this career path that you have, starting as a lawyer. And even your days back working as an assistant with Jerry Bruckheimer, reading scripts, and how you entered the entertainment business. So tell us a little bit about your history and what the early days were of when you earned your degree from UCLA and went to work in the entertainment world.
Yeah. My career starts even before that. I worked for 4 years in the entertainment industry before I went to law school at UCLA. So I worked at CAA, and then I worked for Jerry Bruckheimer, and then I went to law school at UCLA and became a talent attorney, where I represented actors, directors, screenwriters, negotiating their contracts vis-a-vis the studios and the production companies that were hiring them. And throughout all that, the whole time there was this undercurrent of, I really wanted to be more on the creative side and actually developing the films rather than just negotiating the contracts and on the business side. So eventually I did that, and I moved to New York around the same time as I started to transition out of being a talent lawyer to being a film producer and developing films and finding funding for films. I worked with Steven Soderbergh on a film that we set up at Warner Brothers, whole long history there. And, to be honest, that was really rewarding, but very difficult. To be an independent filmmaker, you sort of need to be independently rich. So I ended up thinking, how can I get a job doing what I had discovered I really love, which was really storytelling, developing stories, but have a job in New York City. And that led me to advertising and to content marketing. I became a copywriter inside of a tech company. And then I got the job running Slate Custom for Slate.com. So that was Slate's branded content studio. And then my boss at Slate went to the Washington Post and brought me over to start the Washington Post's branded content studio, at that time called WP Brand Studio. And I grew that over 4 years' time into award-winning organization, kind of really leading the pack especially in terms of interactive multimedia brand storytelling. And then I left there. I went to Edelman for a year, ended up being the pandemic year. Didn't know that when I got there. Ended up being the pandemic year, but really got to see things from that, PR, comms, and agency perspective. And then this Marriott job came up, and it was really a marriage of everything I love, and especially travel. And to be able to do what I love, storytelling within the travel industry, was just like a dream come true for me. I'm a totally passionate traveler. I'm always planning my next trip. Even when I'm on a trip, I'm planning my next trip. So it was very exciting for me to be able to go to Marriott, even though it was at, obviously a challenging time for the travel industry in January.
Boy, yeah, what a perfect storm to join Marriott in the midst of a pandemic that hit the travel industry so hard, and really, I think a bit of a reorganization for you at Marriott as well, and reimagining what the team structure is there.
Yes, Marriott went through a big restructure over the course of during the heart of the pandemic, for obvious reasons. So the team that I'm running was a newly formulated team. There's people on the team who've been there a very long time, but the team formulated this way is new. So it encompasses editorial content, video content, social and digital content.
So tell us about the team structure then, because I know you're in New York, and then there's people in Bethesda, and how do you, I mean, managing during the pandemic, we're all doing it by Zoom. So I guess everyone's remote at this time, but you've got teams located in Maryland and New York and international, I suppose.
Yeah, so my team is majority home base near the Bethesda, Maryland headquarters. I have a few team members who are in New York with me. To be honest, it hasn't made any difference so far because we haven't got back to the office, right? So we're all just on screens, but all of that's about to change. I'm actually going to meet my team for the very first time in person next week. Wow. In Maryland. Yeah. And go to that headquarters for the first time I took the job. So that's exciting. I'm like, it's an interesting thing to try to come into a company, manage a fairly big team all over screens, right? It's a real challenge. So I'm very excited to actually meet people in person and form those connections. So a couple of people I already knew from brand storytelling. Right. Robin Benefield and Kate Fetcher on my team, who are brand storytelling people.
Yeah. So what a challenge, what sort of stories, when you came into this job in January of this year, how do you tell travel stories to people that can't travel? Tell us about the content you produced here over the last 6 or 8 months.
So, I think by the time I started in January, we were really looking ahead to people starting to travel again. I think that the real challenge of how do you talk to people when they aren't traveling at all, that challenge they'd already dealt with it, and they dealt with it in some interesting ways I wasn't there for. One of the ways I found interesting was they did a Dear Travel UGC campaign on Marriott Bonvoy's social media channels. And they asked people to write love letters to travel, to their travel memories, to where they wish they could go. Sort of, keeping that love for travel fresh in people's minds, even while they are unable to actually do it. And also to keep them looking ahead, to the point at which they would travel. So I think that campaign did really well. It hit the right note. And then, Marriott Bonvoy Traveler, which is the digital travel magazine that Robin Benefield runs, they pivoted in some really interesting ways. So there was, travel was always happening. It just people weren't getting on planes. So, they did a lot of road trip travel pieces. They actually launched a travel podcast called About the Journey during the pandemic year, which is doing really well. So, pivoting to, talk about the trends that people were really interested in over the past year. But by the time I got there, this was all changing, right? So we were looking ahead by the time I got there to the spring. Clearly the vaccine was rolling out and people were starting to get back on planes. So that was where the mindset was when I got there, and how are we going to really, have a authentic and meaningful foray into this moment when people are so excited to be returning to travel.
Let's talk a little bit about the power of travel, the campaign that a lot of us are going to be seeing during the Olympics. And I think there's an ad campaign that you're supporting with content, but
Yes.
Marriott Bonvoy is calling on the world to embrace the transformative power of travel as a vital pathway to growth, healing, and unity. That's that's a big statement. Tell us how this works and how Marriott's supporting them.
Yeah, so I think when I got there, they were already down the path a bit on this campaign. But to be honest, even in my interviews, when we start talking about this campaign, it really dovetailed with exactly where I thought Marriott Bonvoy should go with its messaging right now. In the sense that it had been a really hard year, right? And it felt like people had retreated into these bubbles, right? Both physically and into their own thoughts and their own biases, and that our world had become so narrowed by our inability to travel, by our inability to really even leave our own neighborhoods or our homes. And that was having serious ramifications for society, right? And so Marriott was saying, we see travel as the antidote to all of this, travel as an antidote to bias, as an antidote to narrow minds, that travel actually opens up people to be welcoming of difference, welcoming of each other, and that it's the perfect way to heal after a year when people have retreated, when society has retreated into these bubbles.
So tell us about the content and how it supports this theme of that travel helps heal and helps foster unity and inclusion. And what are the different stories you're going to weave, and will they all live on the Marriott Bonvoy platform, or how do they get distributed?
So our content strategy to support this messaging and the advertising campaign overall is really 360 and really broad. So I'll talk a little bit about how we thought about it, and then I'll get into the executions. So we took this idea of travel being truly transformative, and travel being this antidote to bias, and thought about how we could bring that home into people's real lives. I mean, that to me, that's what content does. Makes storytelling relevant to people's lives for brands. So that was our goal. We thought about the different ways in which travel can be meaningful to people's lives, and broke that into different pillars. So it can be meaningful to people on a personal level. It can be meaningful to people's relationships. This obviously is a huge thing that happened over the past year. People weren't able to see each other, lovers, and weren't able to see each other and get married. People weren't able to see their children. People weren't able to see their grandparents, right? All of that. Obviously, travel has a huge impact on our relationships. Travel also has a big impact on how we see our communities and how we connect with the communities that we travel to, and also on our outlook on the world, right? More broadly, on the environment, on sustainability, on how we take care of our world. So we thought about it in those buckets. We thought about the content we were doing as living within these storytelling pillars. And then we did all kinds of different things, and we still are. So the other thing I'll say about content versus the ad campaign is that we thought about it as a way to continue the conversation that the ad campaign started. So the ad campaign makes a big splash on TV, out of home, etc. And then we kind of follow it up with the storytelling that keeps going. All right, so it doesn't become a one and done kind of thing, but it becomes relevant to people's lives in an ongoing way. So some things that we've already launched that are really interesting. Couple things is on the Marriott Bonvoy Traveler site. We launched a Travel Better Hub. So the idea there is, how do we help people actually travel in a more meaningful way, in a way that supports the communities they're traveling to, and supports the world and the environment. So we're doing a series of articles, multimedia, interactive, immersive articles on this hub that will be amplified in various ways and will reach a huge audience through Marriott Bonvoy's newsletter.
I was looking at the site yesterday, and it's interesting because you can select vacations where you can have some purpose in your vacation. You can volunteer to, help the sea turtles, get out to the ocean. You can go pick up litter on Catalina Island. That's a great idea of giving people something to do that they're going to feel good about, that they're going to go give something back to the environment. That's pretty brilliant. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, so it was kind of amazing about it was that, a lot of the articles that you see on that hub, we just launched the hub, but most of those articles were already created. So Marriott Bonvoy Traveler has been creating articles that fit this theme, that help people travel in a more meaningful and responsible way for years. And so we were able to repurpose a lot of articles that had already been written, and then also write some new articles. One that I really love that is original that we launched just a couple weeks ago was around supporting the LGBTQ.
Oops.
Close to home. And so that piece was new and launched. It's kind of gives you kind of a sense of where we're headed. This hub, also not a one and done thing. In the mid-production on various articles that are going to take even more of an immersive multimedia approach. So take a little longer to produce, and we'll have more video and more widescreen visuals, 360 video, and more interactive components.
Cool.
Are you losing me?
Yeah, it was just a little choppy. I think you're back now.
Okay.
With travel, I mean, the challenge, I think, is that there's so many darn stories to tell. When you have so many properties around the world and storytellers to help contribute to them, it's like choosing which ones to go for has got to be challenging.
Yeah, I mean, in general, you can almost tell any story when it comes, right? Travel is how you go places and see new things. So what story isn't related to travel, right? So you sort of have an embarrassment of riches trying to do travel storytelling, and you're actually absolutely right. Narrowing it down to the right stories to tell can be really difficult. So that's part of the reason we developed that framework, right? And that's kind of the kind of discipline I wanted to bring to the team, right? So like, how do we take a broad theme like transformative power of travel and break it down into some storytelling pillars to help guide which stories we select to tell? But also we try to ensure that the stories we're telling are diverse from each other, right? So we're telling all different kinds of stories. So, what we're doing with Marriott Bonvoy Traveler is just one piece of it. We're also going to create a mini doc series in partnership with a media company that centers around the relationships pillar. So travel reuniting us with each other, and really a kind of like a look at the most emotional and compelling stories around that. Obviously, that's a very different take than the one Marriott Bonvoy Traveler is taking, where they're really focused on the community and the environment and how your travel can support those pillars. So, we try to really mix it up. And then, social media also reports to me. So that's a huge piece of what we did around the campaign too. And our thought was, so social media is a great place to bring things into people's personal lives, right? You're kind of having this one-on-one conversation with people. They can submit content, right, and talk about themselves instead of like the one-way conversation that you have when you produce an article or a video and you're showing it to people. So that was exactly what we did. We brought people into the conversation on social media and asked them to share what this return to travel moment means to them with the hashtag travel makes us. We had our first foray onto TikTok with this idea ever for Marriott, which has gone incredibly well. Is really exciting. And there we got, TikTok influencers to take the mantra of the campaign in audio and put it against their own travel memories in photos or video. And then other people have been organically just picking it up on TikTok. So that's been really exciting. But that's just one example. And social media, they really my team really went all out with just trying new things around this campaign, from Instagram stickers. There's this really interesting out of home placement in New York City that connects to Pinterest. So in-store windows in New York City, there's a Pinterest display in the windows that you can QR code on your phone, and it takes you to the Pinterest experience and populates a mood board with your answers to a quiz. So yeah, we just super experimental and inventive on the social side, and really trying to figure out new ways to bring people in to the conversation around the power of travel.
So this is interesting about how you kind of interact with the advertising part of the company, right? Because the power of travel is an ad campaign, right? There's 30 and 60-second spots that launch this week.
It launched, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Okay, but I think there's a lot of emphasis on the Olympics. You got some.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So we'll be seeing more and more of the ads. So.
Oh yeah, it's not over.
These are two. So how does that work with the marketing team, the people that run advertising? They come to you and say, Annie, we've got this campaign. We need you to support it with content. Is it a collaborative thing? I mean, there's two different groups, aren't they?
It's more than two. So so the team that was driving the creative of the advertising campaign. So there's also paid media, right? But that was driving the creative. So what you're talking about, those 30 and 60-second spots. That's our portfolio marketing team. They're in the same part of the organization as the content marketing team. So the woman who runs it is my peer. So it's a really easy collaboration for that reason. We're both in the marketing department together. So I was hearing remember I said, even in my interviews, I was hearing about this campaign. They were already, they already pretty much knew what they were doing by January, right? So even when I was interviewing, I was hearing about this campaign and already thinking, okay, so how can we do some real life storytelling around this, right? So the ad spot is, it's beautiful and evocative, but it's scripted, right? That's the nature of it. And I think our job in content is to take those scripted, really emotional, compelling moments and make them land in people's lives. So, I don't know if Marriott had ever worked this way before, where they came up with an ad campaign and then, a team said, I'm going to take that and I'm going to come up with a content strategy that goes across all these channels and really brings this thing home into people's lives and keeps the conversation going. I think it was a first. And to some degree, it's because they set the teams up this way for the first time. There wasn't a distinct content marketing team before now, right? It was a first, but it worked really well. It was all a bit experimental for me and for the company.
Maybe there's a trend emerging here that that big companies look at their advertising and content teams as on the same bench, and how how you put the right players on the field at the right time, rather than people scrapping for budget and fighting one another. It's like, well, we're all in this for the same thing. How do we use content to engage prospects and our customers, right?
I think that's right. And I mean, we would have meetings where we talked about everything going on across Marriott's channels around the campaign. And that included, 6 different groups at Marriott, right? So that goes, well beyond the portfolio marketing team, the content marketing team, you've got the paid media team, you've got the PR team, etc. Right? So all of us had to be coordinating around this. It was more than just the content team looking at this ad spot. It was, kind of everybody. And I think it's also more than an ad campaign, right? Because like I said, we're going to keep this conversation going. That we're not going to stop talking about the power of travel and how it's changing people and communities and the world. To me, that is what Marriott Bonvoy is about. And if they're going to communicate that, it can't just be a couple months this summer. It's got to keep going. So I think it has set the tone for the brand, right? And for all the work that's, getting the message of the brand out there.
If you love travel, what a great company to work for. There's some perks involved here working for Marriott International. What's the first property you want to go visit?
Oh my God, there are so many. It's extremely hard to choose. And I feel like every day I see another one that I'm like, oh, I want to go there. Yeah. I already went to one, which was awesome, which was the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando. I went over spring break. So that was great. It was, with my 9-year-old, it has amazing pools. So
yeah.
If you have kids that like pools, there's a lazy river, like really fun. So that was fun. That's not necessarily my dream spot, but my 9-year-old, I think it would be up there. I think, they have incredible properties like in the Maldives, and
sign me up for that one.
Yeah, I mean, just really like mind-blowing properties out there. You save up all your points for that splurge.
Maldives looks insane. That's awesome.
In Greece, I didn't do it, but I was playing around with the Greece vacation this summer, and the Luxury Collection, which is one of the brands under the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio, has some incredible properties in Greece, both on the islands and in Athens, that I was looking at, from palaces to just absolutely decadent beach resorts. So I really could go on and on. There's so many cool properties. Also, there's a new Moxie in South Beach that I'm dying to check out, which looks really fun.
Wow. How many brands under the Marriott International umbrella? How many brands are there? There's
30. There's 30.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. It is huge. And I think that's part of what we're trying to get across. I think people don't necessarily know that brands like Ritz-Carlton and St. Regis and the Luxury Collection, Design Hotels, the W, Moxie, these are all under the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio. And so it becomes more than a hotel company. You can, plan your whole trip. They also have all these live experiences that you can use your points for, and all kinds of partnerships that allow you to use your points for all different kinds of things. So it is becoming more of a travel platform than a hotel company. And that's part of what we're trying to get across with the campaign also. Yeah.
Well, listen, it's time for people to travel. Everybody I'm talking to these days has got a trip in mind. The people are getting on airplanes.
What's yours?
Going to resorts. And
where are you going next, other than Sundance?
Well, I just got back. I was on the road for a month in May.
Nice.
We pulled our Airstream trailer around, didn't stay in any hotels. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so fun. Oh, that's great.
But I like going to Mexico. I've got a couple of favorite beaches in Mexico that I go to, and probably be doing that sometime in June.
Oh, nice.
And then it's off to Park City, and January we're back with brand storytelling at Sundance. So
I know, I'm excited.
Forward to seeing you there. Annie, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Of course.
All the best in this new role. I guess it's still new. I mean, you're less than a year on the job.
Yes, it still feels new.
Yeah, it's what a big challenge, and I'm sure that you're rising to the occasion and having a great time. So thanks for joining us. We're wishing you all the best, and we'll be following you on Marriott Bonvoy and other places.
Thank you so much.
All right, Annie, take care.
Bon voyage.
Travel safe.
Thanks. Bye.